I, 28F, never thought that I would come to narrate here on Reddit, but here goes. My husband, Marcus, and I have been married for 3 years now, and it has been one big roller coaster of emotions, mainly due to my father-in-law, Robert. Marcus and I were college buddies, classmates. Both of us were business majors, but we moved in different circles. He was the popular guy, always surrounded by an entourage of friends, while I was more of a nose-to-the-grindstone type, working part-time to help finance college. We had a few classes together over the years, but though we were friendly, I really didn't bond beyond casual small talk. We lost contact because after college I started at the bottom of the marketing ladder while Marcus landed a job in a top firm based on his family's social capital. It was only 3 years after college, at the wedding of a mutual friend, Sarah, that I saw him again. I can recall that day so easily. I was helping Sarah with some last-minute decorations when Marcus walked in. He looked different, more mature, more confident. We started to talk, and it was as if no time had passed. We danced, we laughed, and by the end of the night, we had exchanged numbers. As our relationship grew from then on, Marcus seems to be into just about everything that I am passionate about, as well as into whatever things that I would like to achieve in the future. A year after, we decided to live together, and after a year, we dated one weekend at the seashore, and that's when he asked me the question of all time. I was on cloud 9, but my happiness did not last for too long. Things went haywire right from the moment Marcus took me to meet his parents, Robert and Linda, 60F. For a kickoff, the moment I stepped into their posh house, I felt like a fish out of water. Robert had achieved his success as a restaurateur and was giving me the once-over in the most scrutinizing way. During dinner, Robert grilled me about my background. As soon as I mentioned my parents, a mother, Sarah, 55 years old, working as a cashier in one of the stores downtown, and a father, Mike, 57 years old, working as a construction worker, he turned aloof. Did try to bring him into conversation with me about my job in marketing, but he wasn't very interested. He turned to Marcus and started talking about the family business, really shutting me out of the conversation. Our relationship was balancing on closer shores each day, and Robert's behavior was deteriorating consistently. He used to pass comments on the kind of dress I used to wear, always trying to point out that I looked cheap. At family functions, suddenly, he would forget to involve me in a conversation or game. When in Spain, on a family holiday, he gave us a small, basic room while the rest of them took the luxurious suites. Marcus picked up on some of this behavior and challenged his dad about it. But Robert was a master at gaslighting, convincing Marcus that I was being too sensitive, reading things into the situation. This led to arguments between Marcus and me, as he really wanted to believe his father couldn't be so deliberately cruel. It all came to a head at our wedding. Despite Marcus's protests, Robert insisted on giving a speech. There was a beautiful moment that should have been joyful, but it turned the tables. Robert's speech was one huge bundle of backhanded compliments and veiled insults. He said that I cleaned up nicely for the wedding. It must be really unusual since he had never seen me look that good. He said he was very surprised that I could afford such a nice dress. He knew better since Marcus and I paid for the wedding. It was a clincher, though, when he raised his glass and toasted to Marcus and his bride. Let's hope he had the sense to get a good prenup. There was a deathly hush, and I could feel my face redden with mortification. Marcus was so angry that he had a huge fight with his father. Robert apologized, saying it was all in jest and that I was overreacting. But the damage had been done. From that day on, family events turned sour. Robert kept on his tirade about events in my life, covering them with maybe a humorous intent or under the guise of innocent discourse. Linda, Marcus's mom, took to playing peacemaker but seldom acted against her husband. But Marcus has been very supportive, and it truly seems to affect him. He feels divided between his love for me and his parents. This has led to quite a few fights about how we should handle this, and most times Marcus just said we should ignore his father's behavior and for the good of family, maintain a false peace. I tried everything possible to win Robert's approval. I've offered to help in the kitchen during family dinners, brought thoughtful gifts for the holidays, and even volunteered at one of the charity events his restaurant support. I thought that when he saw how hardworking and devoted I was trying to make something of myself, maybe then he would accept me. But nothing seems to work. The fight last weekend took the matter even further. We were at a family barbecue to celebrate Linda's birthday. The day had been going relatively well, with Robert mostly ignoring me, really trying hard to not insult me, and as the evening wore on, and the drinks flowed, Robert's true colors came out. He'd corner Marcus and start in on him loudly, about our finances, inferring to everyone within earshot that surely I must be bleeding Marcus dry. "I sure hope you are watching your money, son," he'd say, loud enough for everybody to hear. These types, you never know with them, they can be so sneaky, gold diggers. Before Marcus could answer, Robert turned toward me and said, "I hope you're not planning on quitting your job now that you've married into money. We wouldn't want you getting too comfortable, would we? After all, you're used to having to work for a living." The party turned very quiet then, and I could feel all the eyes on me, with pity mixed with an uncomfortable look on their faces. I couldn't bear it either. I mumbled some excuse and left the party, tears streaming down my face as I rushed to our car. We had a huge fight in the car. He accused me of being too sensitive, telling me to learn to take his father's jokes. Shocked by his words, how could he still defend his father after what had happened? I told him that this was getting tiring. I was not ready to be disrespected, and if he was incapable of defending me, then maybe we are not meant to be together. The drive back home was full of silence, with tension lying thick in the atmosphere. Now Marcus is sleeping in the guest room, and we barely talk. His parents have been calling and texting endlessly, asking why we did such a rude thing at the party. Marcus wants me to offer my apologies for peace's sake, but in this case, I don't think I should be the one to apologize. I love Marcus, I really do. Things are just fine between us two. He is a nice person and so supportive, too, and we share the same ideas and dreams for what we want for our future. We have talked about starting a family, buying a house, and settling into life together. How the heck can we do that with this cloud hanging over our heads? I have tried to understand Marcus's position. He is quite understandable, though. It is easy for him to get caught between his wife and his parents. But at what stage does standing by silently become an equal to condoning his father's behavior? I can't help but think, though, that my parents have been together I don't know how long and are no better off. My parents were always supportive of me and accepted Marcus in an open and understanding way. Hitting me now? They made me see the importance of working hard, being honest, and treating everyone with respect, no matter who they are. I wish Robert could see those virtues in me, not just notice my working class roots. Please, I don't know what I shall do anymore. Must I stick to my guns that Marcus must fully support me in confronting his father, or might it be backfire? I don't want to take a step that can distance me from Marcus, probably shaking my marriage. I don't think I can bear it. Am I just overreacting? Should I learn to cope with Robert's behavior for the sake of my marriage? Or do I really need to draw the line at this time? I really feel lost and could use some advice. How do I move with this situation without losing either myself or my marriage? Update when it's been about 2 weeks since my last post, and I wanted to update you all on what's happened. Most importantly, I want to thank everyone for their supportive comments and advice. They made a big difference in terms of understanding the situation and really gave me the courage to make a move. A couple days later and a lot of tension had passed, Marcus and I really talked things through. I decided to show him my original post, with all the answers. As he read through everything, I could see the realization dawning on his face. He said he was in full denial about his dad's behavior and that he's sorry for not firmly standing up for me. We talked for hours, about our childhoods and how they made us view things. Marcus opened up about having grown up with Robert as a father. He told me a bit of stories of the great pressure Robert put on him for success, how nothing ever seemed to be good enough. It gave me a glimpse into why Marcus would have such a hard time standing up to his father. I opened up more about my own upbringing. I told Marcus about those Christmases, when my folks would have to give us each just one small present, but how the whole house was still bursting with love and laughter. I talked about watching my dad come home exhausted from long days at the construction site but still finding the energy to help me with my homework. I wanted Marcus to understand that while we may not have had lots of money, my family gave me something much more rich, unconditional love and support. Afterwards, we agreed we had to face his parents. Marcus said that we should have them at our place for a dinner. I was reluctant to this idea to avoid being embarrassed by Robert Moore, all over again, but I agreed. And so the next few days were spent in preparation for the dinner. Marcus and I worked on the menu, which I insisted had to be lavish without being overtly so. I wanted to prove to Robert that, yes, I could belong to his world, but no, I had not gone that far from my roots. Lunch was to be held over the weekend, and indeed, it was so intense, to say the least. The arrival of Robert and Linda was enough for me to realize that we were already tensed. We passed small talk with the appetizers, leaving Marcus to steer the direction of the conversation to neutral areas. It was by the time we went into the main course before Marcus cleared his throat and addressed his parents. He started, not so gladly, by informing them of their conduct of late, or rather Robert's, which affected all our relationship. He might have spoken amicably, though his tone was assertive as he made them understand that we are just going to minimize our contact with them if they continue treating me with disrespect. Really, it didn't take long for Robert to go on the defensive. "You've turned Marcus against us," he said. Once again, though, it didn't work. Marcus wasn't going anywhere. He cited examples of Robert's abusive behavior, most notably the wedding speech and the recent barbecue incident. As Marcus told all, I looked at Linda's face. She truly seemed to take it in as a shock, since her eyes got wider and wider with every example Marcus mentioned. She had not really realized the extent of Robert's behavior. Finally, she turned toward me as her eyes filled with tears, expressing sorrow for not having spoken sooner. But even Robert didn't give up on me. He kept telling me he had always treated me fairly, I was just too sensitive. And finally, I had had enough, so I said. I took a deep breath and looked Robert in the eye. It was what I was going to say about how his constant poking and joking made me feel, how he put me in questioning my worth when we started. I continued on how entering a room made me feel unwelcome and already on edge, just preparing to be defended from the next insult or backhanded compliment. So then I decided to change tactics. Instead of all the defensive arguing, I started boasting about my people and my background. I told him how my parents used to toil day and night to make us have 3 decent meals and save some money for my college. I related fascinating anecdotes of the lessons learned from them, of how hard work and honesty would eventually pay off, how decent living standards, without discrimination or distinction, were every person's right. I told him that in spite of the lifestyle he despised, I'd achieved what I'd become through hard work. I told him that I financed my college education by scholarship and through part-time jobs I'd been into, which later boosted me into a successful career in marketing. To him, I might even not have been born with money, but I was raised with old-fashioned values that money couldn't buy anyhow. As I continued speaking, I saw Robert's face change. He looked amazed like he had not seen me before. Many times he wanted to interrupt, but Marcus did not allow him. He harshly told Robert to, for once, just listen to what I had to say. By the end of the night, Robert had not yet apologized but was a lot more subdued. Linda, however, was almost in tears. Before they left, she hugged me hard and said in a whisper, "I'm sorry, and things will be different." We were literally drained by the moment they left. We felt relieved. He told me how proud he was of me for standing up for myself, and I told him how much it meant to me that he had my back. That night, for the first time in weeks, we spent it in the same bed, holding each other close. Later that day, we both received text messages from Linda. Again, she apologized, but this time she said she was feeling ashamed that the behavior of Robert was allowed to continue for so long. She further requested for a lunch meeting with the two of us, alone. I had met Linda yesterday, in a small cafe. She seemed a different person, more open and vulnerable. She shared a few stories of her early marriage to Robert and how his controlling behavior had slowly started to isolate her from her own family and friends. She admitted that she had been afraid to stand up to Robert for years, always making excuses for his behavior. She needed my aid to confront Robert to make him learn of his mistakes so they can rebuild their relationship with us. She also told me that she practically talked Robert into approaching a family counselor with her so that they could settle all their issues. I'm quite optimistic about what's happening with Linda, but still cautious with Robert. Marcus and I have agreed to take things slow and keep our boundaries tight around his parents. We decided to limit our visits for now and always present a united front. We realize it's a start, but it's going to be a long road to completion. We are also contemplating couples counseling because this situation has raised some issues in our own relationship. We need to make sure we're both on the same page as we move forward. I will let you know about the developments. Thank you once more for all your encouraging words and advice. It's been tough, but I feel like we are finally going in the right direction. Update 2. Well, it's been a month since the last update. A lot has been going on, interesting, to say the least. Well, after our dinner confrontation and my lunch with Linda, Robert went very silent on us. He would text occasionally to check in, but he was generally silent. Marcus was uneasy, but I found it a nice reprieve from the tension. During that time, Marcus and I worked on our relationship. We first decided to go see a couples therapist, which has been really helpful. We worked on our communication and resolved a few issues that the behavior of Robert was manifesting. It wasn't easy, but we're both committed to making our marriage stronger. Last week, everything changed. Marcus had a call from Linda in tears. Apparently, Robert had a health scare with some minor heart attack. He was all right, but the experience had really shaken him up. Marcus made a dash for the hospital, and I made up my mind to be with him for support. Anyhow, we reached the hospital to find Linda sitting by Robert's bedside. Robert looked pale and smaller somehow, hooked up to a variety of machines. A major contrast to the big imposing figure he usually cut. When he saw us, something in Robert's expression changed. He sent Linda and Marcus away from us. I felt my stomach churn with nervousness, but I stood my ground with him, remembering the power I discovered that lay within telling him no. Robert began to speak with a gruff voice. He said, lying there was so much time to think, though I began at feeling that it was all unfair. Right from the start, I'd let my own prejudices get in the way of my judgment. Then he did something I never expected. He opened up about his own past. Robert had a tough father, one who had impressed upon him that status and wealth were most important. He told stories of growing up poor, the horrible shame of wearing second-hand clothes to school and watching his mother work herself to the bone to keep food on the table. As he climbed that social ladder, he'd assured himself of a couple real sureties, that the same pitfalls would bypass his offspring, at least one of which, his own visage, forever marked out whatever heyday that should have been. He went on speaking, and gradually, I came to see Robert in a very different light, far from the picture I had once had of the cruel, domineering father-in-law to the very flawed man, someone very much a product of his experiences. It didn't excuse what he had done, but it did make it a little bit more understandable. He apologized for everything, the snide remarks, the wedding speech, the belittling. He said he finally realized that in trying to protect Marcus from what he perceived to be a threat against his lifestyle, he had almost driven his son away. He admitted that seeing Marcus rushing to the hospital with me by his side made him realize what really mattered in life. I won't lie, I was a bit skeptical at first. A near-death experience makes people say things they really do not mean. But the more we talked, the more actual remorse I could see in his eyes. I told Robert that I did appreciate his apology, but rebuilding our shattered trust needed time. He nodded in agreement and told me he understood, and he was now ready to do whatever it would take to make things right again. Then when Marcus and Linda returned, Robert called Marcus to sit down. He apologized to him as well, for putting him in the middle, and he realized that he did not respect his choices either. Marcus was visibly moved, and for the first time in years, I saw them hug without any underlying tension. Ever since that hospital day, things have never been the same. Robert was let out of the hospital a couple of days after, and he's been making efforts, adjusting. He went as far as inviting me to dinner last weekend and making extraordinary efforts to be nice to me. He even inquired about my parents and seemed generally interested in listening to me tell him about them. This has been very supportive for Linda, and I've seen her getting more courageous with the self-expression of her views around Robert. They have also started seeing a family counselor together, and Linda said it has been helping them work through so much. Marcus appears, if anything, more at peace than I have seen him in years. He has been pulled between his wife and his parents but is released from that stress. We still go to couples counseling. It has helped tremendously in bridging back our communication and trust. I'm only cautiously optimistic. It's the one where I realize that there's no easy way out all the time now, and years of hurt can't neither be made up for in just a night. But also willing to give Robert a chance. For now, we just take it each day as it comes, establishing healthier and open communication quite well. Never thought a health scare would make this possible, but I am grateful for the new chapter in our family dynamics. I will keep you posted on developments. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update. It has been a roller coaster, but thank goodness the positive changes to health that I spoke of in my last post have, for the most part, continued. Robert's consistency has actually always been in the attempt to compensate and get to that place where he wins the confidence of Maria. He made an effort to know me, beyond being Marcus's wife. We had spent time sitting with him, talking, and having one-on-ones with people, where he asked me about my work, hobbies, and family. He has even shown interest in meeting my parents, which has been a significant step toward reconciliation. We had a parent dinner last month, and I was somewhat worried about how it would all play out, given the picture I have in my mind from what I know of their histories and backgrounds. The evening started off a bit awkwardly, with everybody trying to be on their best behavior. But as the night went on, things began to relax. Suddenly, Robert and Dad connected as they discussed construction work. Robert started to talk about his days as a busboy and dishwasher in restaurants before he owned his own place. It was satisfying, said my dad, to see a building put up from the ground floor generally to completion. They even exchanged numbers to meet up for coffee sometime. And my mom and Linda were also getting along famously. They found common ground with their experiences as mothers and both knowing what it means to be an understanding wife with their husbands who are just too involved in business matters. At the end of the night, I was glad to see them laughing at each other. All throughout the evening, Marcus was beaming with a pleasure that could not be hidden. He hugged me tight after everyone left and thanked me for not giving up on his parents. Linda's self-assurance has been getting better lately. She contacted some former friends and started volunteering at women's shelters. It is wonderful to see her. We meet for lunch very often, and we really have developed a nice friendship with each other. Marcus and I are doing fine. The decrease in family stress makes us focus on what we want for us in the future. We are even talking about starting our own family soon, which before we wanted to put off because of the tension in our families. We even started to look for houses in the Ace for both our jobs and close to both sets of parents. However, all has not been smooth. There has sometimes been a return to old habits. Robert sometimes makes remarks that can be considered to be insensitive, but I realize that they are not deliberate now. In such situations, I have learned to handle the matter calmly at the time, and Robert has been very accommodative to such comments and feedback. We have attended several family therapy sessions as a couple that felt quite cleansing in terms of dealing with some big issues and setting new, healthier patterns of communication. This also was quite tough because it also touched on quite a few issues of past hurt and misunderstanding, but at the same time, it was very healing. My wife and I also resumed our couples counseling. We learned a tremendous amount through the process about communication and support toward one another in tough times. We are now stronger than ever. Generally speaking, I'm grateful for the distances we have gone through. It's been quite painstaking, and yet so much is left to be done. Finally, I feel like I belong in that family, and I'm not an outsider. The coming month is Robert's birthday, and for the first time, I am positive that I want to come to another gathering. Thank you also very much for all the support along the way. You prove to be a priceless guide for me at this point and will be in much demand for taking up those challenges in life. Rest assured, I believe with firm certainty that we now possess the tools and are willing to work through problems in this family together.